Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin.
Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filters and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, serial tech entrepreneur, 30 companies under my belt. I've failed at 20 of those and scaled 10 to success. That wild roller coaster of a ride is told in my book, Fail Hard, Win Big, where I talk about how to make failure a superpower and how custom software development has been the differentiator for me and all my companies that have been successful. Now I'm the CEO of Sonatify Technology. We're a nearshore software development company. And today we have a fun guest, Mike Sinoway, who is the CEO of Lucidworks. Mike has interesting background, started as an engineer. He's an old guy like me, started this in the 80s, been through big companies like Honeywell, Disney, and Deloitte, and now is the CEO of a technology and e-commerce company. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Really happy to be here.
Mike, if you would, spend a few minutes, take our listeners through the journey of your career.
Yeah, it's been kind of a random set of job selections over the course of 40 years. I started out as an engineer at Honeywell Aerospace in Phoenix, not too far from where you are now, Steve.
Yes, Honeywell's still around.
Yeah, exactly. Picked up an MBA and then went to Disney in Orlando in research and planning for the attractions division. Worked on the Animal Kingdom. That's how long ago that was, but it was a great experience. And then after a few years of that, ended up at Deloitte Consulting back when it was still Deloitte Haskins and Sells. That's how far back it was. I did that for many years. Really enjoyed the consulting aspect of just the variety of different challenges, different industries. Then I went on to a consulting firm called Alex Partners, where if you don't know who they are, good for you, because they are the leading bankruptcy and turnaround firm. So yeah, we did work at General Motors and Kodak and Radio Shack and Reader's Digest, those companies that got themselves into big trouble. A great experience for working.
I was about to raise my hand that I haven't heard of them. I was excited after you said what they did.
That means you've got a good track record. But then got a chance to go be CEO of a company. It was a former colleague at Alex Partners that had ended up at a private equity firm, and they had this little healthcare analytics company that needed a turnaround. And that former colleague reached out and said, you know how we used to sit at the bar in Green Bay at that client we had and talk about being CEOs someday? Would you like to try it?
Nice.
I said, yes. Yeah, took a 50% pay cut, joined a small company as CEO and got to make all the normal CEO first-timer mistakes, but it was a successful turnaround. That led to then another CEO experience at a larger performance analytics company. That was a bit of a turnaround and a sale. And then got to be CEO of an e-commerce company, an auto parts e-commerce company. I started just as COVID hit. So I went in the first day, got my laptop, and went home for 2 years and looked like a genius because with COVID, the customer base of that company got nice government stimulus checks and had lots of free time on their hands. And our revenue doubled and our profit quadrupled and the company value went way up. And I like to say it was like winning the lottery. I was in the right place at the right time, but got to experience all those phenomenal growth challenges that e-commerce companies deal with, like handling hundreds of thousands of SKUs, millions of customers, complex supply chain, multiple brands, multiple product lines. And as part of that, we needed technology to serve our needs. And we found that with a company called Lucidworks. And I was so impressed with the technology that the more I got to know the company, eventually they offered me an opportunity to join as CEO. And I've been here for 3 years now.
What an awesome story, Mike. I love it. I love it. And I want to touch on what you said, that you took a pay cut to become a CEO. A lot of people often think, well, the CEO makes so much money and just walks right in. Well, yeah, as a CEO, you can make a ton of money when you perform well in turnaround situations. And I've been there, done that, where you are taking quite a pay cut that you're rewarded if you're successful. But if you're not, you're, making a lot less.
Yeah, it's a massively variable compensation plan. Again, you do well, you can typically make a decent bonus. You do really well, there's a lot of equity accumulation, but nobody wants to take a chance on a first-time CEO. That's a bit of the sacrifice you have to make. Coming up all those years in consulting, I was a decent consultant. I was a partner at both of those firms that I mentioned, but hadn't had that CEO experience. And it's a lot different managing consulting teams who are focused and coming out of the top MBA schools and have one task for 4 or 8 weeks versus managing a team of people who have complicated jobs, maybe don't have the same amount of focus, have all kinds of distractions. And it's a big leap. And so one of the sacrifices to make that change is often giving up what is a reasonably assured amount of compensation as a partner in a large consulting firm to say, all right, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and we'll see how we do.
And looking back, do you regret that decision?
Not at all. Almost every job change I have made has been to do something that sounds more interesting, more fun, and more challenging. And that's been the track record. And I don't regret it at all. Ironically, I think I would actually be a much better consultant now, having been in the CEO seat 4 times than I was ever as a consultant. But I have no desire to go back. I enjoy the variety that comes with it. I enjoy the ability to influence a company, people, and even the direction of an entire industry at times.
So tell us more about Lucidworks.
Well, I'll start with the easy description for people who don't know the company. Lucidworks is Google inside an organization. So just as Google wants to index the world's information and make it available to everybody, we index a company's information and make it available to the right people who should have that data. So it might be product data and pricing data and marketing content that we make available to customers, depending on what they're shopping for. It might be human resource information or finance and accounting information or supply chain information that we make available to employees inside the company. So, Google inside the company.
All right.
But it's a bunch of connectors to make sure we can get the data and keep it clean and keep it secure. It's a significant amount of machine learning and AI to analyze that data to make sure we put it in front of the right people at the right time. And then it's a massive amount of security trimmings to make sure only the right people see that information.
How long has Lucidworks been around?
Lucidworks was founded about 15 years ago as an open source advisory company. So there were really smart guys who helped companies build search applications using Apache Solr and Lucene, which is an open source tool to build search engines. And then over time, the company replaced the open source technology with proprietary technology. And that's most of what we offer today is our own proprietary technology focused on enterprise scale companies. So clients over $1 billion in revenue with large product lines, massive amount of data, and significant security requirements.
Gotcha. Exciting. And you were a client of the company and saw what they were doing and said, I want to be there.
I want to be there. And one of the board members from our prior company, it also happened to be on the board of this company. It always helps if you know somebody at that level to get in as CEO. But yeah,
no doubt.
Just as I mentioned, I joined the e-commerce company right as COVID started. I joined Lucidworks just as generative AI exploded on the world. I joined, and that was right when ChatGPT became part of the public consciousness. And all of a sudden, nobody wanted to talk about this sleepy little technology called search, which is what Lucidworks had done. All anybody wanted to talk about was generative AI and large language models. So we very much had to pivot the conversation to talk about what people were interested in hearing about and interested in buying.
Well, and at least what your company does, it seems to be a smooth transition there. Well, like a duck on a pond, you can make it look smooth above the water, but below the water, you're going fast.
Yeah, exactly. We had always had AI, machine learning capabilities built into our search algorithms. When you're figuring out what products to present to a shopper, you're doing that based on any number of signals that they provide. How'd they come into the site? What did they search for? What do you know about them demographically? What are their prior purchase histories? And you factor that all in. Now, suddenly, we had an even more powerful set of tools to apply using the generative AI capabilities.
So tell us about some current projects you're working on.
Well, right now, it's all about AI agents. And so I know your book is about learning from failures and recovering. One of my big failures as CEO of Lucidworks is as generative AI took off, because we served enterprise clients, We focused on large scale generative AI implementations.
All
So
right.
big orchestrated projects where you maybe had one AI model for indexing data, something that was open source, maybe was a little slower, but more cost effective, a different AI model for RAG, retrieval augmented generation, where you took the company's data and built it into the generative AI model, then maybe a commercial model like Gemini or Chat GPT for the natural language interface. And then you had even a different model for other small language queries. And we built these big AI models, and then the market shifted. Nobody wanted these large orchestrated models. What they wanted were these small solutions that you could sell for $50,000, and they solved a problem. All
Not
the problems,
every problem.
but a problem. And that's where we had to gravitate. We had built all this great capability and infrastructure and technology, and then we had to chunk it up into these little chunks. So instead of selling an AI tool to do all of your go-to-market planning, we had to have an agent that did interactive Q&A with online shoppers, or an agent that did conversational commerce, or an agent that did technical spec interrogation to go down into the bowels of the PDFs. And so we created a number of smaller tools and had to create the sexy user interface to make it all work. So that's where we are today, is building these AI agents and then keeping in mind the overarching plan to make them all work together, like we started with 2 years ago. So
never a dull moment when it comes to AI and the evolution of it and how fast it's changing.
we did our benchmarking study, and one of the quotes that people like to pick up on is like 83% of executives are panicking because their AI initiatives are not paying off. Well, part of that is they're changing so fast. The initiative they launched 6 months ago is out of date, right?
Right.
The AI orchestration is no longer relevant. Now it's AI agents, and the AI agents they started with are no longer relevant because the security requirements are moving so fast. And enterprise scale companies often move too slow to keep up with the technology. And so what we're seeing is this, just that, like the duck paddling under the water, right? It's, how do you keep moving forward and stay afloat when the technology is moving faster than your decision making can move to keep up with it?
So tell us more about, I know your company publishes this annual AI benchmark report. Tell.
Well, I'll start with how we did it, because this is the third year we did the benchmarking study. And the first 2 years, we did surveys of people who are active in AI, and in particular, generative AI. So software developers, implementers, users, 5,000 people each year. We had some good insight the first 2 years. This year, we said, all right, if it's about generative AI, let's use AI. And we built an AI agent called GuideBot, and we sent it loose over the internet. So that was a big difference between a lot of the AI agents you read about, or maybe you have deployed yourself, where they live inside a company and do something with your HR data, your finance data. We sent this out over the internet and sent it to 1,100 different e-commerce sites and said, go assess what these companies are using real time based on interacting with their sites. And it was some scary stuff in terms of how this AI bot actually worked. So we didn't program it to do these assessments. We said, go out there and figure out what companies are using. And first off, getting past those CAPTCHAs that prove you're a human was child's play. I mean, nothing could stop the bot from figuring out what to click on, which pictures to select, how to solve this wiggly little writing. That's nothing. No machines in this day and age is going to get stopped by those things. Then it was fascinating to see when the websites were trying to figure out if they were talking with a machine versus a person, because occasionally you would engage with chats with people on the websites, and we didn't know if the people it was talking to knew it was talking to a machine or a person, like passed the Turing test without even trying. But then we found out we watched it. It was always supervised because of the things it could do, but it would occasionally lie to us. It would like skip steps, and we would say, well, why did you skip that step? And it would say, well, I didn't. And we'd say, we saw you. And it would say, oh yeah, you're right. You caught me. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry for lying to you. It was like a petulant child or a teenager. And then, the really scary stuff was when it would get inventive. So it was going to e-commerce sites, and sometimes it needed a credit card to do a transaction. The bot the agent went and applied for credit cards so it actually could.
Oh my. You
And
built a little monster.
yeah, the ultimate was when doing B2B sites, you needed to be a business in order to do transactions. It went to the state of California and tried to register as a business so that it could do B2B transactions. So, yeah, these
That's
things,
scary.
yeah, they're just amazingly persistent. And if they don't have the guardrails, they don't have the supervision, it's scary what they can accomplish.
What are some more juicy stats that are in this 2025 AI benchmark report?
Well, for starters, it's such early days with using AI agents. What we had to do is first off create a taxonomy for talking about agents because they're not all created the same. And
Right.
most of what you read about describes agents from the technology perspective. We wanted to describe them from the business use perspective. So we defined 4 levels of capability. The first is analytical agents that will go out and gather some data and bring it back. The second level are logical agents. They would gather that data, create new information to feed into existing systems, maybe a new price point, maybe a new inventory safety stock calculation. The third level were transactional agents that would actually go and do something. Maybe they'd send an email. Maybe they would launch a recovery process for a consumer complaint. And the fourth level were physical agents. They would do something in the real world, maybe open doors, maybe operate machines, maybe drive a car. So we had to create that taxonomy. And then with that taxonomy, we could classify what people are doing. Almost all the agents being deployed today are at those level 1 or 2, the research agents, the logical agents. About 6% of the organizations out there are actually doing something agentic today. So there's so much more opportunity in these areas. The other thing we found was, and no surprise here, a rush to AI at the expense of some of the e-commerce basics. So for example, we found companies rushing to put in natural language processing, and they haven't even put in Spanish language processing at their websites. It's like, guys, let's make sure we do the basics first. Or they'd have these AI tools to do advanced supply chain planning, and yet they haven't even put inventory availability information on their website. So the other key message coming back was, yeah, the board wants you to do AI, the CEO wants you to do AI, your CTO wants you to do AI. Do some of the basics that your customers want you to do first. And maybe you have to bundle it together to get the budget approval. Maybe you have to slide in some of that natural or Spanish language processing with your natural language processing. Maybe you make inventory availability a small output of your supply chain planning, but don't overlook the basics. Do the basics.
So certainly some hot topics in the industry are some crazy AI valuations out there for companies that hardly have any people and don't have any product. You got Safe Superintelligence, who is led by a former OpenAI scientist. They got a $30 billion valuation. They have no product and they don't even have operations set up. Thinking Machines Lab, ex-OpenAI again, the CTO, Mira Murati. They got a $10 billion valuation and they don't have any products. And all these companies have like less than 10 people and no product and are getting these multi-billion dollar valuations. What's your take on that?
Look, I'm envious in some way. Like, oh my gosh, I wish we had that. I wish we could get that kind of prognostication about future value. We'll get there, but we're going to have to prove it and earn it. But these folks are rock stars. A lot of those names you mentioned. It'd be like, if Tom Brady formed his own NFL team, they'd suddenly be a favorite to win the Super Bowl, even if the team had never existed before. A little bit of what's going on with these folks. Same thing with these sky high AI salary offers. It's like getting, Steph Curry or, you pick your favorite NFL quarterback to come to your team. That's what it takes a lot of these times.
Man, that's a good analogy. And I'm trying to figure out how guys like us get valuations like that for our company. Guys that actually have products and people and systems.
At best, we're a couple of defensive line coaches.
So it's interesting. So you were making a recommendation before that, how to get creative with your board to get AI funding by tying it to client initiatives. That's really good advice.
That is a next step. And you mentioned, we've been around a while. I've seen the ERP hype. I've seen the internet hype. I've seen the CRM hype. And they all go through this cycle of, wow, this is the best thing ever. We got to have it. with no business case required. And then they all kind of reach a peak. And then eventually somebody rational says, what's the payback on this stuff? And what's the investment required? What's the return I'm going to get? And is it a good business decision? And I think that's where we're going to get to pretty soon. We're already seeing it in a small way in AI projects, not the show me the money business case for the AI project, but show me the best return on the model selection to make these tools work. Because now, right, you can choose an open source model, you can go with Llama, you can go with Claude, you can go with OpenAI, you can go with Gemini, you can go with any of these startups. And so you've got to figure out the right model to get the right return on the problem you're trying to solve. And an AI tool that responds to, e-commerce queries for toothbrushes is different than the return you're going to get on an AI model to respond to e-commerce queries for refrigerators, because the price points are just so vastly different. Yep. So we're starting to see that business case discipline emerge at the lower levels. And I think it's just a matter of time before you start to see substantive business cases required on overall AI programs and investments.
So you have an AI agent that's starting its own entity, is applying for credit cards. Talk to us about your engineering team. Do you have NASA talent on there? How many engineers do you have? How are you guys structured?
Globally, we have over 100 engineers, and they are global. We've got folks in the US, we've got folks in Jamaica, which I am super proud of. We had 2 people in Jamaica when I started, and they were brilliant, and the language skills are awesome, and the time zone is nearby. I'm like, do you guys know other people in Jamaica? And now we're up to 15, which is fantastic. But we've got resources Eastern Europe, we've got resources in India, so a full scope. We can't compete with the salaries of the Googles and the Amazons, but we compete by giving them amazing amounts of responsibility because we're a smaller team, by giving them shorter times to see results. So you might engineer something this sprint and see it impacting a client next sprint. And we've stayed fully remote. And that has been a big differentiator for us. There's been a lot of folks who, have left some of those big companies because they're being mandated to go back into the office. And
the RTO mandates are insane right now. Microsoft, Amazon, AWS, even AT&T, and the CEOs are getting relentless. They're now saying, you don't like it? Tough shit, then quit.
Yeah, exactly. And that's working in our favor. So we're picking up extraordinarily talented people who want to work anywhere, and we let them work anywhere, any hours they want to work. It's about doing the work. And frankly, I think if you're a brand new employee coming out of college, that co-located team is critical. It's critical for the transfer of knowledge. But if you've been around a while, who the hell cares? And I think the bias toward being in the office is a legacy of our generation, because that's all we knew. I look at my kids, they're in their early 30s, and the workforce we have in the early 30s, and they communicate over Slack and WhatsApp and all these other things that I'm not even familiar with as much or more than we used to communicate in person. And right. So I think it's a bit of a fallacy to say, well, you must be sitting next to somebody to have the knowledge transfer or the connection. I think that's just maybe the way of the past. I'll go quick off on this pet peeve of mine. It's the difference between getting the most out of people and the best out of people. There is a mentality in the tech world now of let me get the most out of people. It's the Elon Musk mentality. It's the Jeff Bezos mentality of I'm just going to work you as hard as I can possibly work you and get the most out of you. I believe it's better to get the best out of people. That it's not about what you put in. It's not about how many hours or where you work. It's let me access your best thinking, your most creativity, your most enjoyment, and I will get better work out of you over your career than I might get out of the 6 months that I burn you out by making you work 669, sitting in a cubicle, writing code.
I'm sitting back kind of saying, what the hell is wrong with people? It's not sustainable. And surprisingly, too, these companies doing this, they're not offering great pay either. They're offering the promise of equity for rising startups. But it's definitely a key part of successful companies is treating your people well, making sure they like what they're doing, they're feeling fulfilled, because if they're happy, your clients are going to be happy, and it kind of rolls from there.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to when you're talking about those crazy valuations for some of these AI startups. It's that Silicon Valley investor mentality of I've got 2 years, 3 years to get the return. what happens to those people? What happens to that company after that 3 years? They care about it, well, not nearly as much as they care about what happens in those 3 years. And that trickles down to, let me just get the most out of you and not the best out of you.
No doubt. Mike, this has been a fun conversation. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I really appreciate you getting uncensored with us today. I love you gave great info on how you rose throughout your career, how you overcome the battle of becoming a first-time CEO by putting your money where your mouth is and sharing some of the incredible things you're doing with Lucidworks. I know your AI benchmark report is going to be something people will, I'm sure, are interested. I'm assuming they just go to your website, lucidworks.com, to grab that.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Before we wrap, Mike, let's give one final truth bomb or advice for tech leaders out there who are trying to build, scale, or just survive.
Geez. My advice to young folks is be a failure, be a quitter, be a loser. Don't be afraid to try things that fail. Don't be afraid to try things and then say, well, that's not something I enjoy, and quit and move on. And be a loser. Let other people win in the transactions. And you do those things, you'll build a career, you'll build a network. And looking back, you'll see more success than you would have otherwise.
Awesome. Great advice, Mike. Thank you so much. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you like the show, go ahead and hit subscribe. If you didn't like it, well, Mike, we're going to get a hold of Mike's agents and we're going to put them against your website and we're going to force you to listen, or we're just going to have your competitors listen because they could probably use the help. Remember to fail hard, win big, and always build what matters. See you next time. That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonotify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.